My wife sold my fishing boat on my retirement day, so I retired her from being my wife. She learned actions have expensive consequences. Update 5. My wife's face had gone pale, but I wasn't finished. The really interesting part was when I found out she'd forged my signature on the title transfer. See, the boat was in my name only, so she had no legal right to sell it. She literally stole my property and sold it to her friend's husband. Linda Henderson, Rick's wife, looked like she wanted to disappear into the floor. Several other people were staring at my wife with expressions ranging from shock to disgust. Now I know what some of you are thinking. Why would a wife do something like that to her husband, especially on his retirement day? I took a sip of my drink, letting the question hang in the air. I asked her the same thing, and do you know what she told me? She said she was tired of being married to someone who cared more about a boat than his own wife. She said someone had to be the adult in our relationship. The silence in the room was deafening. My wife tried to interrupt. Honey, maybe we shouldn't. Shouldn't? What? Tell the truth. Share what really happened. I turned back to the crowd. See, I thought this was about the boat, but then I started looking at our relationship more carefully. The way she'd gradually taken control of all our financial decisions. The way she'd dismiss my ideas about retirement while making unilateral plans for our future. The way she'd spend freely on her own interests while telling me we needed to be more careful with money. My sister, who was sitting at the front table, had her mouth hanging open. My brother-in-law was shaking his head in disbelief. I realized the boat wasn't the problem. The boat was just the symptom. The problem was that somewhere along the way, my wife decided that my opinions, my dreams, and my property were hers to control. My wife stood up abruptly. I think we should go home now. No, I think we should finish the story because this is where it gets interesting. She sat back down, her face red with embarrassment and anger. So I did what any reasonable person would do when someone steals their property. I got my lawyer involved. I made the friend return the boat. I separated our finances to protect myself from future unauthorized transactions. I looked directly at Linda Henderson. Your husband Rick was very understanding about the whole thing. He realized he'd been caught up in something he had no part in creating. He returned my boat and asked my wife for his money back. Linda's face was bright red now. Everyone at her table was staring at her. But here's the thing that really opened my eyes. When I confronted my wife about all this, when I showed her the evidence of her planning and scheming, when I explained the legal consequences of what she'd done, do you know what her response was? I paused again, making sure I had everyone's attention. She said I was destroying our marriage over a boat. She said I was being ridiculous. She said I was embarrassing her in front of our friends. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. She stole my property, forged my signature, lied to me for months, and then claimed I was the one destroying our marriage by holding her accountable for it. My wife's eyes were filled with tears now, but they looked more like tears of rage than remorse. Ladies and gentlemen, I want you to think about that logic for a moment. If someone steals from you and lies to you and you call them out on it, are you the problem or are they? The crowd was completely still. Some people were nodding slightly. Others looked uncomfortable but couldn't deny the facts I was presenting. I spent 37 years being the accommodating husband, the peacekeeper, the one who let things slide to avoid conflict. And where did that get me? It got me a wife who thought she could steal from me on my retirement day and face no consequences. I raised my glass one final time. So here's to retirement. Here's to finally having the freedom to surround myself with people who respect me enough to treat me honestly. And here's to my fishing boat, which is back where it belongs, and which I'll be taking out every single weekend from now on. I drained my glass and set it down. Thank you all for coming tonight. I hope you've learned as much from this experience as I have. As I walked toward the exit, the room erupted in whispered conversations. My wife sat frozen at her table, surrounded by people who now knew exactly what kind of person she really was. I didn't look back. I'd said everything that needed to be said. 6 months later, I was standing on the deck of my boat, watching the sun rise over the water. The divorce had been finalized 3 weeks ago, and for the first time in years I felt completely at peace. The sound of my ex-wife's voice was no longer part of my daily routine. The constant tension of walking on eggshells around someone who saw my happiness as a threat was gone. The legal proceedings had gone exactly as my lawyer predicted. The forged signature made her position indefensible, and the documented pattern of financial control I compiled painted a clear picture for the judge. She tried to claim half of everything, including the boat, but the evidence showed a clear pattern of her making unauthorized decisions about marital assets. In the end, she got exactly what she was legally entitled to: half of our joint savings, half the value of the house, and her own car. She did not get the boat she tried to steal, the retirement accounts I'd funded entirely myself, or any claim to the life I was building without her. Now you can watch the 6th part by pressing share and more.